Hi, here's a wee story about the area when I was a wee laddie. You'll notice this photograph here is Lidl's. Hello at Farm Street. Quite nice when you go in there. Prices are not bad. So on. See in the background, plenty of houses there. But when I was a laddie, obviously that wasn't there. This gives you an idea of what it was like when I was a laddie. In the background there, that was Carn Works way down the bottom, Carn Road there. Up here, you get Girder Street and Farm Street down there. All this land here was more or less just waste ground, as you can see. That's where Lidl, the cooperative and all that was built later on. But over the back here, you had a foundry there called Mungal Foundry. Give you an idea, you've maybe seen some old stock photographs before about Mungal Foundry, but that's roughly what it looked like. Been in there many times. There's the other side of it there. You could, if you want to see some better photos, you could log on to the Falkirk site. You'll get a lot of different photographs about Mungal Foundry. I remember it when I was a laddie, because my brother worked in there. He was on the engineering side, and later on he left there to go to the BA. But however, they employed quite a lot of people in there, and it was more or less similar to what they did in Carn Works further down. They were doing telephone keys, all that sort of stuff. But later on, the company sort of run down like every other company did. And it ended up making baths. Now, I remember going there and having a wee look round, and it wasn't metal baths like what they did in the other Carn Works. It was plastic ones. They had a big press up there, and they put a big sheet of plastic in, say about, I think it was about half an inch thick. It'd be about, what, 10, 11 by 4.5 feet, something like that. And they put it in this press. Then, of course, the press came down, there's steam, heat and all the rest of it. When it went back up, out popped a plastic bath. Of course, they used a lot of fiberglass, etc., to strengthen the bottom of the bath. So you can imagine there were a lot of chemicals there. But that's what they did later on before it closed down. And I can remember I had a wee job that I was to go in there and have a look around at night, make sure everything was okay, because there was still a lot of dangerous stuff in there. But it was getting broken into quite a few times. Anyway, I went in there at night. I had my dog with me, an Alsatian. And if anybody's got an Alsatian, they'll know themselves that they're one of the best dogs that for scent, they'll smell anything, if you know what I mean. Anybody in there, I'll see them and it'll take you right to it. Anyway, that's another story. But I used to go through that factory, and it was like a time scene, if you know what I mean. You can just imagine people working in there, then all of a sudden they just all down tools and walk out. Everything was left in place. I even mind going into one of the boss's offices there, and the kettle was still there, half full of water, his cup and his tea bag, if you understand what I mean. It's as if somebody just waved a wand and everybody disappeared. But that place there was the lifeline of many people in Mainsford. Never forget it. This here, I mind, I used to come across here and go over that wall, play in the ground. But at the other side of the Foundry, there used to be a farm road. I think it was at Merkison Avenue way. There was a road that went all down the back of the factory, and you could end up coming to the Cairn Works, the River Cairn, and come up through Cairn Road, if you know what I mean. But if you go to the top of, is it Reynolds Road? This road goes up here. Up the top, if you look over, at the back where this used to be, you'll see Cairn Cemetery. Cairn Cemetery is not that far away from where we used to live. So we actually used to go there too. Simply because it was all sand. It was like a sand quarry. And we used to go up there and play. Now, the bit where we used to play is called Section 20 of Cairn Cemetery. If anybody's been to the cemetery, they know what I mean. So, in our youth, we used to do that. But the factory itself, as I say, it was just left. Everybody moved out. Then eventually you got the demolishers in and all the rest. I bet they made a fortune out of the stuff in there. Then of course all of a sudden it was just bare land, rubble, that sort of stuff. Then of course they came along, builders, and they started building Lidl's, the garage further down the road a bit, and all these houses you see in the back there. That's a wee story that, well, was part of my life growing up. But when you think about all the workers in there, they more or less came from all down this area, Bainsford, Langley's, when that was that sort of thing. So sad to see it go, but like many other industries in this area, they all disappeared. At one time, if you were young, you could go to one job, you didn't like it, you left it the same week or the same day. The following day you could go into another factory and start there. I've seen people go into different jobs 3-4 times in 1 week. I know I did it twice to try and improve my wages, because wages in the days when I was an apprentice was between roughly about £2-3 a week. That's an average. So that gives you an idea what you had to work for in those days. Anyway, that's a wee story. Bye the news.